Okay, well, I'm just going to remind everybody Palm Springs Meetup, Saturday, November 9th, 2024 at noon. If you'd like to join, please put a support ticket in or join the Telegram channel that's talking about that. We're going to go to updates and user emails. And we talked about this last week, but fintech giant Stripe to buy crypto startup Bridge. Stripe was valued at about 65 billion earlier this year and is among the highest valued private startups. And as you know, what was rumored, Stripe will buy stablecoin infrastructure provider Bridge, the fintech said in a tweet on Monday without disclosing the deal value. The deal is valued at about 1.1 billion, Forbes reported last week, citing people familiar with the matter. So that's a huge thing. And Stripe back in, I think it was 2018 or so, they took Bitcoin, but because Bitcoin takes so long, they had to drop it because the frustration level was pretty high with everybody. They are going to go with stablecoins, and some of those stablecoins that are on, there's so many different networks that now have USDC, USDT, Tron, Solana, Sui. That you can do things much faster now, and so Stripe is going to take advantage of that, and that is our provider. But there are issues that come into play when you have subscriptions because, typically things are taken right out of the credit card, but that's not necessarily true with crypto. So they've got to figure that out, and maybe they will. So we're moving on to scams, hacks, and breaches news. Misspelling Sonium on Google could drain your crypto wallet, scam sniffer reports a sponsored ad on Google that appears as a website linked for Sony's blockchain Sonium is actually a hidden crypto wallet drainer, according to Scam Sniffer. The blockchain security firm said on October 22nd X post that its team found Google search for Sonium produced a sponsored link to a malicious website that included a wallet drainer. Searched for Sonium on Google, clicked phishing ad. It added, phishing away happens when you not paying attention, even if you mistakenly spell Sonium as Sonium. So the spellings are there. You can discover that. But be careful what you're typing, and be careful these sponsored links. When I type something in, I never select the sponsored link because we're not sure who's actually sponsoring that. So go to the real search results, and don't go to the one that says sponsored. You could go right down here and get the same link, but just a safer version of that link. Bumblebee malware returns after recent law enforcement disruption. The Bumblebee malware loader has been spotted in new attacks recently, more than 4 months after Europol disrupted it during an Operation Endgame in May. Believed to be the creation of TrickBot developers, the malware emerged in 2022 as a replacement for the Bazaar loader backdoor to provide ransomware threat actors access to victims' network. Bumblebee typically achieves infection via phishing, malvertising, and that's just what we were talking about on the Google side, and CEO poisoning that promoted various software like Zoom, Cisco AnyConnect, ChatGPT, et cetera. Among the payload typically delivered by Bumblebee are Cobalt Strike beacons, information stealing malware, and various ransomware strains. The most recent Bumblebee attack chain starts with a phishing email that lures the victims to download a malicious zip. So be careful what you're clicking on. Be careful what you are, putting on your website. Or, sorry, not your website, on your computer. Okay, and now, governments must tax or ban Bitcoin to maintain deficits, Minneapolis Fed says. A recent research paper by the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis suggests that assets such as Bitcoin should be taxed or banned to help governments maintain deficits. Yeah, of course. They want their deficits, and they get it, as much as they want. Us people, the real people, we can't maintain deficits like the government does. But Bitcoin introduces a balanced budget trap, an alternative state where the government is forced to balance its budget, the Fed wrote. Oh, that's so sad that they'd actually be forced to do something. The researchers use Bitcoin as an example of a fixed supply private sector security without real resource claims. They concluded that it should be banned or taxed to solve the conundrum. Well, and now we go right to the other side of the big lake, and perpetually rising Bitcoin prices would lead to societal impoverishment, ECB economist claims. A new paper from the economists at European Central Bank titled Disruptional Consequences of Bitcoin basically are stating, yet even under a scenario which Bitcoin's prices continue to rise without the possibility of a burst bubble scenarios impacting holders, the paper's authors argue that latecomers and non-holders would suffer greatly at the expense of early adopters who either sell their coins to latecomers or cash out into material assets, often cited as Lambo, the paper states. I don't know, that sounds like a regular stock transaction, or maybe an early adopter or early buyer of Tesla or Apple or Microsoft or any other investment, but they don't like it because it actually competes with what they produce. And so here we have someone that definitely disagrees. And in all the years I've been monitoring the Bitcoin space, this by far is the most aggressive paper to come from authorities. The gloves are off. It's clear that these central bank economists now see Bitcoin as an existential threat to be attacked with any means possible. Yep, that's pretty much they can't get along with it because it actually competes with them, and it's better. So technology news. U.S. Treasury used AI to recover $4 billion in fraud over the past years. AI, as we know, is being used everywhere. The United States Department of Treasury said it used artificial intelligence to sift through data and recover $4 billion in fraud and improper payments in the 2024 fiscal year. The Treasury said on October 17th that it used AI helped boost the amount far beyond that of previous fiscal year, which it only recovered $652 million in fraud. The Treasury stated quietly using machine learning AI since late 2022. This type of technology specializes in analyzing vast amounts of data and making decisions and predictions based on what it learns. So that is a lot, and I'm sure more and more government agencies are going to be using it in their tracking of everything. So quantum computing versus RSA encryption, why quantum computers aren't breaking encryption yet, and future implications. In recent times, it has been considered concerns regarding claims that Chinese scientists have cracked military-grade encryption, specifically RSA encryption, using quantum computers. It's not true necessarily. The stories circulating online stem from Chinese scientific paper which details a successful factorization of relatively small integer using a quantum computer. While this may represent progress in quantum research, it is far from breaking that threat of security in current encryption systems. The key size used to experiment was only 22 bits. That's not very big, which pales in comparison to 2048 or even 4096 RSA keys, currently in use for encryption. Breaking these larger keys requires exponentially more computational power. Quantum computers and they currently stand and are not capable of handling such large-scale encryption-breaking tasks. And you got to remember, I know people were talking about this before. They're like, well, when are they going to break, the Bitcoin keys? Well, you got to remember, what they were experimenting with was 22 bits. And what cryptography does Bitcoin use? It uses 256. So, it's far, and it's exponentially larger when you go from one key size to another. So I know we were worried about it 2 years ago, 3 years ago when people were talking about it, but I wouldn't really worry about it right now. Redbox easily reverse engineered to reveal customers' names, zip codes, and rentals. And when I was going through this research, my husband looked over his shoulder or my shoulder and said, "Is Redbox still around?" I'm like, you know what? I don't know, but they're not. Since Redbox went bankrupt, many have wondered what happened with those red kiosks and DVDs. Another question worth examining is what will happen to all the data stored inside the red boxes? But Redbox falling into technologists' hands can seem almost the result of uncovering a customer's data from kiosks and hard drives. So basically, these kiosks have been abandoned. If it's in front of 7-Eleven, they have thrown them into dumpsters. And so people have been taking them and breaking into them. I don't know, maybe taking DVDs, if you can still even find a DVD, driver to play on your TV. But there's data in there that is yours and mine. The red box logged lots of information, including debugging information from transaction terminals, and they left old records on the device. This probably saved them to some time for QAing software bugs, but exposed all their users' data being leaked. Data went back to at least 2015, Turner said on Mastodon. She told LawPass the data included records for when stuff is rented, including customers' emails, addresses, zip codes, as well as names of rented disks when they were rented, and also included some customer credit card numbers. So thanks a lot, Redbox. Maybe you should just take care of your stuff before you let it fall into the hands of other people. Fake Google Meet conference errors push info stealing malware. A new click fix campaign is luring users to fraudulent Google Meet conference pages showing fake connectivity errors that deliver info stealing malware for Windows and Mac OS operating systems. ClickFix is a social engineering tactic that emerged in May, first reported by cybersecurity company Proofpoint from threat actor TA571, that used messages impersonating errors for Google Chrome, Microsoft Word, and OneDrive. The errors prompt the victim to copy to clipboard a piece of PowerShell code that would fix the issue by running it in the Windows command prompt. Victims would thus infect systems with various malware such as Darknet, etc., etc. In July, McAfee reported that ClickFix campaigns were becoming it says mode frequent, but I think they mean more frequent, especially in the United States and Japan. So be careful if something asks you to copy this into your computer to fix it. I would contact the support group. Maybe download a new version, delete the old one, and see if that fixes it before anything else, because you just don't want something like that in your system. And before I forget, do you have 2FA, MFA on everything? If not, do it. I'm going to remind you every week because it's not worth having issues come up that you have to deal weeks, months, and years with. And finally, we have AI and the SEC whistleblower program. Tax farming is a practice of licensing tax collection to private contractors. Used heavily in ancient Rome, it's largely fallen out of practice because of the obvious conflict of interest between the state and the contractor. Because tax farmers are primarily interested in short-term revenue, they have no problem abusing taxpayers and making things worse for them in the long term. Today, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, which we all love, is engaged in a modern-day version of tax farming, and potentially for the abuse will grow when farmers start using AI. In 2009, after Bernie Madoff's $65 billion Ponzi scheme was exposed, Congress authorized the SEC to award bounties to civil penalties recovered from security law violators. It worked in a big way. In 2012, when the program started, the agency received more than 3,000 tips. By 2020, it had more than doubled, and then more than doubled again by 2023. The SEC now receives more than 50 tips per day, and the program has paid out a staggering $2 billion in bounty rewards. According to the agency's 2023 financial report, the SEC paid out nearly $600 million to whistleblowers last year. The appeal of the whistleblower program is that it alerts the SEC to violations it may not otherwise uncover. Without the additional staff, and since payouts are a percentage of the fines collected, it costs the government little to implement. First, while the blockbuster awards paid out to whistleblowers draw attention to the SEC's successes, they obscure the fact that the staffing levels have slightly declined during the period of tremendous market growth. In one case, the SEC's largest ever, it paid $279 million to an individual whistleblower. That single award was nearly 1/3 of the funding of the SEC's entire enforcement division last year. So can you talk about bloat? Can you talk about corruption? And I thought I'd end up, that's not a happy note, but it just shows you what the SEC is really made of. And that's all I have for today.